Welcome back. This is going to be a fun one today. Today we're looking at Carpaccio of Beef. Carpaccio of Beef is going to be with a difference. It's a good old classic, good old fashioned. We're also going to add some tartare, also another classic dish. We're going to zhuzh that up a little bit and add a bit of fun and excitement. So first of all, we're going to get onto our tartare mix, which is basically some fillet of beef. So what we're going to do is we're just going to slice that. And the nice part about this is it's best to always chop beef, for instance, for tartare, and to slice it for tartare. It just gives you a completely different experience. And then we have the classic ingredients that we always add to things like tartare. That would be things like your onions, it would be your gherkins, it would be your capers. Obviously that's our salty component in there. On their own, they're quite intense. I do tend to like to fry them, as I've mentioned before. They work really well and they just add another complexity to the dish itself. Again, we want something that can be fairly rough. It doesn't have to be too fine because you want to get all those different flavors kind of exploding in your mouth. Gherkin. This is just a lovely pickled item, which again gives a really nice flavor explosion. Alright, so we mix those in together. As you can see, I've also got some emulsion, just a bash there to pull it all together. And then obviously we'll season this once we've combined all of those wonderful flavors together. And some salt. In this case, I'm using a bit of desert salt. We're going to have a bit of fun with salts, different types of salts, utilizing it in some of our dishes. Of course, because it's all about salt at the end of the day. So then on to our second piece of beef. I've got some of the nicer prime cut here, and we're going to use that to slice. And this is the best part. If you don't have a slicer, for instance, those gravity slicers, for me I do it by hand, and we call it hand sliced or hand cut. It sounds a lot fancier. Again, also with things like carpaccios, you'll find that a lot of people go through the old traditional. I'm all for it. However, I think sometimes we also need to change certain ingredients. In that case, things like your beef would normally go through a soaking of lemon juice and black pepper. In this case, I'm actually just going to marinate it with a lovely marinade that we've made for it and eliminate the whole freezing and slicing. I get a thicker cut, so you get more value for money, and you're actually eating the beef itself, not just a slither. So we just take the knife and we press it down. We do that with all of these, and we can start assembling our plate. So quite an easy dish, but something that's also very tasty. A lot of people would say, wow, it's raw, I can't eat it. But in actual fact, you'll be surprised. Once we've worked all these ingredients together, you actually have an incredible product. And over here, I've got some of Kala Namak, which is a Indian salt or Pakistani salt. Quite unusual, it's got a nice sulfurous flavor profile to it. And we're just gonna sprinkle that over. And you can be quite generous, because obviously we wanna get some flavor onto that meat. There's nothing else to help it. I've got our marinade over here, which is some sun-dried tomatoes, which we've dried in the oven over a period of 6 hours. We've got a little bit of thyme in there, some garlic in there, some olive oil, some black pepper. I'm just gonna pop that on the middle. And we'll just smear that all around, just for that incredible flavor profile. Our little blush tomatoes. Again, we've also put these through the oven. I've kept some of them whole because they're quite small. So they add a nice little explosion again of those different textures of the tomato. These other ones are very small, marinated again with some garlic in there, some herbs, some thyme, and some olive oil just to give it that moisture. We've also got some parmesan, which I'm just going to use as a little bit of a garnish, very classical with something like a carpaccio. And then to bring in our tartare, we're just going to use 2 spoons. So this technique that we're going to use to shape the tartare itself is a little bit unusual to the way we normally use it on a dish. But again, bringing a bit of a modern take on there and using our 2 spoons, which we call a quenelle. Bit of good old-fashioned classical cookery today. And we just put that straight in the middle there. With things like a tartare, we would normally add an egg component, either something that's raw, but in our case, I prefer to either poach it or even boil it as an egg. And the ones I like to use, because they're smaller, more dainty, and more flavor profiled, would be something like a quail's egg. So this is what we're going to use today. I like a serrated knife because you can saw through the egg a little bit, and then we're going to take that and poach it. So in here, you would have your normal water, a little bit of lemon juice or vinegar for that matter. The acidity helps the white to separate from the actual shell. So when you peel it, it actually comes off very nice and easily. So we put that into our water. When you eat it and you break it open, all that lovely yolk runs out into there. So we're just going to put that straight on top. Garnish off with some of my favorite garlic emulsion. Then also from a textural point of view, I've got some anchovies, which is quite unusual to have on a carpaccio for that matter. So I've put it into a little tempura batter here. I find that because anchovies are also very big on flavor, very salty, I think it's important to kind of give it some credibility in the sense of the batter, which here is tempura, so it'll puff up a little bit. Going to put it on there, so it just sparks those flavors as they come through. All right, so we're just going to pop those into our oil. So you've got that lovely airiness of the tempura and then that anchovy which softens as it cooks in the oil itself. Nice bit of color is always good to get on there, so nice golden, and that should be no longer than 30 seconds at most. Alright, just on some tiling to take off the excess oil there. Again, obviously a little bit of seasoning, because you lose some of that as you go into the oil. It takes a bit away. Okay, so over here I've got a charcoal bread which we've made. We use our normal dinner rolls, and then from there we bake it in the oven by adding some activated charcoal into the actual dough itself, so you get this lovely black color. It just adds a bit of texture and a bit of flavor. So you can either do it in a crostini form, or if you really want to, you can trim that up a little bit better. In this case, I think I might just even use that as my garnish on top of there. Right, so over here you've got your different textures of meat. You've also got items that are raw but also influenced by different flavors and components. You've got the lovely creaminess of the emulsion on there, cheese, and then our fried component. For me, I love things that are fried. It just changes the whole perspective of the dish. And then obviously to break those sort of minimal colors, we're going to add in some greenery, some little baby shoots of beetroot, a little bit of baby rocket. So we got the final piece over there. It's always nice to have a plate that kind of shows off your food a little bit. Over here I'm just going to garnish that up with a bit of oil, adds a little bit of lubrication to the dish, a bit of flavor from the olive oil. I like to use a sort of a medium oil so it's not too intense or too strong. And then just a quick recap. We added some salt, desert salt from up north of our country. We've also added an international salt, which is the kala namak, just to finish those flavors. And just because we can, I might just give it a little bit of a twitch of more salt, just to bring all those last flavors out.